maybe this title is a little bit of a troll, maybe it's not. But before I get into that, I want to talk to you about this idea that I've been interested in for a very long time. It actually comes from the military. It's an idea called force multiplication. The idea is if you can give a tool to a small group of people and they will be as effective as a much larger group of people without that tool, that's a good thing. And the most common example given of force multiplication is the invention of the smart bomb, of satellite-guided bombs. During World War II, we would send just clouds of bombers filled to the brim with bombs, and we would drop them by the thousands to try to blow up one factory. Now, one bomb, one plane, one factory, boom, gone. That's force multiplication. We only need one plane to do the job. Another way to express this is doing more with less. We need to do more with less. Well, there's one particular idea in force multiplication in the military that I got really, really interested in, and it was this thing called the future force warrior. This was an idea to take off-the-shelf mobile technologies and give them to the warfighter. Now, let me just say that this was in the early 90s when they started talking about this. So talking about it now and talking about these things, it's like, well, sure, why wouldn't you do that? Back then, this is crazy future stuff. They were going to use open software like Linux. They were going to put things like Palm Pilots, literally Palm Pilots, into the warfighter's hands. They were going to put a screen on their eye. That's that augmented reality. It's a little tough on that slide there. They're going to put video on the gun sight. So for the first time, the warfighter would actually be able to literally shoot around corners, because the video feed from the gun sight would go up into their eye, and they could just look around corners and shoot. Hilariously, and anyone in here who has a smartphone, which is probably everyone in here, will know that the reason that this thing failed, batteries. They couldn't load these guys down with enough batteries to keep these things running for very long. And so they actually ditched the project. It actually was deployed into the field once in Iraq during the surge. And it actually worked really well. But by the time that they deployed it, it was already canceled. They had already gotten rid of it. Well, not long after that, or around that time, you know, the iPhone came out, and suddenly we started spending billions of dollars trying to make our devices smaller and more battery efficient and make the batteries last longer, and all of us started piling huge piles of money on this, and the military walked away from it. So, what does this have to do with media? Well, this room, I don't think I have to tell you that the state of media right now is not great. Unless you're Al Jazeera, there isn't anybody adding boots to the ground in great numbers right now. So media is having to learn to do more with a lot less. They're having to learn force multiplication. And being interested in both media and this kind of idea of force multiplication, I started thinking about that. Well, what could we do to kind of extend the ability of a reporter, to extend their capability to gather information, to do what my boss used to call that reporting shit that you do? How do we extend that out? And I started looking around, and I asked the question, is there such a thing as a future force journalist? Could we create something similar? Well, you know, TLDR, yeah, no problem. There are a lot of ways that I could go with this, but there's just a couple that I want to talk to you about real quick. The first thing I want to do, though, is I want to start with a definition. And I want you to think of news as being when things go different. We don't write about the morning commute when everybody gets to work on time and safe and happy and healthy, or mildly angry that they're having to go to work at that hour of the morning, or whatever it is they do. If they all get there at the same time, they all go, they all drive safe, nobody cares. We don't write about the house that doesn't burn to the ground. We don't write about any of these things that don't go, or that just are supposed to go that way until they don't. Well, there is a lot of stuff in our lives that's measurable that we could actually use computing We could use open hardware. We could use all kinds of things to detect when things were going different. And it all started with this maker movement that has emerged in the last few years. And we are talking about open hardware and microcontrollers and small chips and cheap computing that anyone can hack on and anyone can work with. We are actually entering an age of DIY robotics. And what do I do with it? There we go. I'm going to make the camera people mad here for a moment. Sorry, Dave. But I want you, since I'm last today, I had to do something to keep you all awake. So I brought some toys with me from my office. So we are at the point now where if you have a credit card and the internet, you can have your own flying robots. And please don't hurt my hand too bad. Come on. Oh, it wants to balance itself. There we go. With nothing more than a chip, a couple of engines, a remote controller, we can have our own flying drones. By the way, I have no money, so if I clip an ear or something, don't come after me. So this is a toy. This is $30. We can buy these in bulk, and indeed we do, because I have students fly these and not the bigger, more $1,000 ones that we have laying around, or $2,000 ones. This thing, like I said, is a toy, but it is a matter of time for me to add a microcontroller and a sensor to this, and now it's a data gathering tool. Hilariously, I may be the only professor who has climbed trees at Columbia University in New York because somebody crashed this thing in a tree. So we can add cameras, we can add cellular antennas, we can add microcontrollers, we can add sensors, and suddenly this little toy that we just fly around here for giggles, and let me tell you, it's fun. It gets really terrifying when they get big. Like the quad that we have is, it has 11-inch blades on it, and there are 4 of them. The Hex has foot-long blades. There are 6 of them. It's a flying lawnmower when it gets going. But, so, why am I talking about this? Well, we can use them to do journalism. Imagine you, journalists, are assigned to go cover a story, one that has a massive scale, a massive spatial extent. You have a drone in your backpack. You walk out there. In the not very distant future, it's not hard to believe that you couldn't pull your phone out and go, Siri, go up 250 feet in the air, turn to the northwest, and turn the camera on. Off it goes. It's slightly more difficult to do that right now. I can tell you from the parts budget that we have. This photo is taken at about 380 feet on the front of an Ascending Technologies Falcon 8, a $20,000 UAV that's not mine. This is in the farming community of Duncan, Nebraska. We are looking at the Platte River during one of the worst droughts in the history of the state of Nebraska. It's not hard to find photos on the ground of a drought that has pretty much covered the entire state. You don't have to swing your arms without hitting a yard that's dead. However, getting up just 300 feet in the air, 380 feet in the air, and looking down the river, and you see a river is more or less a sandy creek bed with some streams braiding through it, you get a much different perspective, a much different perspective. We can do this now with about $1,500 worth of gear. It's getting to the point where just about anyone can own one of these and do this. We can honestly program the one that we have to fly itself. It flies better than we do. It certainly flies better than I do. I joke all the time that one of the most significant limitations of drone journalism is that I'm a terrible pilot. So we can now tell it, okay, go up 100 feet in the air, go to this GPS point, go to this GPS point, go to this GPS point, and come back. And be running the camera the whole time, or turn it on somewhere along the way. Aim the camera different directions. We have independent control of the camera. We can do all of these things. We can mount sensors to this, and we can fly along. I'm working on a project right now where we can actually take water samples from given points in the river robotically. We don't have to be there. Robots do this much more efficiently and much cheaper than we do. I joke that right now undergrads are cheaper than drones. That won't last. That won't last. But what else could we do? Well, we could take cloud hardware or open hardware or cheap hardware. We can add some scripting languages, and we have open data, and we can build our own data gathering bots. You do not need the NSA to gather a ton of data about people. You can do it yourself. Start your own NSA kit at home. This is my desk at work. Actually, this is my workbench in my office at work. Yes, I have a workbench in my office at work. Right there on the left, next to my water cup, is a Raspberry Pi. It is a $35 computer. It's about the size of a deck of cards. The hard drive is that little black thing sticking out of there. It's an SD card. I have it running software that goes out on Twitter and looks for tweets about a topic, brings them back, stores them for me. I have other software that goes through and analyzes that stuff and tells me what's going on and spits out information about what is going on a specific topic. Because news can be defined as what is when things go differently, I could actually program this to send me a text message and say, hey, stuff blowing up on Twitter. Get on there. I could take this and scrape the police department's 911 feed that's online, and whenever a word like homicide or dead body or something like that, shoot me a text message. I could be constantly gathering that data and actually have the software tell me, hey, you know what? They've actually reported a whole heck of a lot of car thefts in the last few days, way outside the norm. Like several deviations beyond the mean, standard deviations beyond the mean here. That's probably a trend story you ought to look into. We can program these things to become story tip generators, to look at open data, to figure out when things go differently, and to alert us to that. Because we are human beings, we can recognize when something actually is going on versus a false positive. I wouldn't want to turn this around and have it write stories automatically, but guess what? It can do that. I can do that. I started writing a script one day, and before I was done, I had a bot that could write 5 paragraphs based on the Uniform Crime Report release from the FBI for every city in America in less than a second. So if you want to get a story up fast on your website about uniform crime reports, let me know. I'll knock it out for you. But what else can we do? Well, we can use open hardware. We can use sensors. We can gather information about the physical environment. And we can add the internet to this, and we now magically have something called the Internet of Things. Sorry, Dave. This is an Arduino. It is a $35 microcontroller that has a bunch of ports here that you can plug electronics into. You can see some of those parts here on the picture on the right. There's a microphone, there's a GPS. That one on the top there, the bigger one, that's an Ethernet shield that you can plug directly into the internet. This kind of bubbly looking thing here is a passive infrared sensor. We can use these things to very cheaply detect information about the physical environment. The one on the left there, up until I left for here, I pulled it out of my yard because we have to work on it a little bit more. It was in my yard. It is a drought sensor that we built ourselves. It's sitting in an $8 LED light that you buy at Target that you're supposed to stick in the ground, and the solar panel charges it up during the day, and at night it puts a little light out, and your sidewalk's all nice and lit up. $8. Waterproof, got a solar panel on top. Bing, that's what I need right there. It would tap into my home wireless network and every 10 minutes tell me the temperature, relative humidity, and you see those 2 little plugs in the ground there? That would tell me what the soil moisture content was of the ground. Every 10 minutes. It would pump it out to a cloud service. I could visualize it, and I could show you how warm and how the temperature went like this during the day. Magic stuff? No, not hardly. But that soil moisture measure is actually interesting, and it's interesting to not just me, it's interesting to city planners, it's interesting to drought scientists, it's interesting to water managers. This, all told, would, if we got down to economies of scale, we could probably build these things for somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 to $40 a piece. What would be really interesting is if we could build 1,000 of them, and we could distribute them across a city, and we could report in real time how dry the soil is in an area, or we could build 1,000 of them and distribute them across a state. What the Internet of Things does, I believe, is two things. One, it indulges our selfish natures. With this, I can tell you what the weather is at your house. I had a boss at the St. Pete Times, Tampa Bay Times, West Hillsborough Times, whatever the hell it's called, who had a very unique view on the weather. His view on the weather was, is it raining on my yard? Yes or no? If it is, I care. If it is not, I do not care. I'm from the Midwest, where weather is a contact sport, and we pay a lot of attention to it. So I found this rather amusing, but I think he's actually more like most of us are than I am. So the Internet of Things allows me to give you a device that tells you data about your world, your specific world. The social contract that's kind of involved in that is you agree to contribute that data back to a larger whole. And suddenly we have a network of communal information that tells us things about our community. Take this, take that microphone, you have a noise pollution sensor. We could map in real time how loud a given neighborhood is and compare it to other neighborhoods in the city. We could watch the day rise and fall with the din of the ambient noise in the area. I think sensors in the Internet of Things has massive potential for data journalists and people who are interested in kind of quantified cities. So what does this reporter plus robotics idea kind of look like? Well, we have examples. We have the technology. We can rebuild the reporter. But let's be honest, this is news. So ain't nobody got millions. I should probably change that to 100 now. But before I finish, I just want to say that the title of this, it was, hey, I found alliteration, I better not change it. I don't actually want to replace reporters with robotics. What I want to do is I want to build robotic extensions of reporters. Now that has consequences. The consequence that I want to focus on is that if I am building an extension of a reporter, I am building an extension of their ethics, of their decision making, of their understanding, of their empathy. And that brings me to the second thing, and that is, if you are sitting here thinking, oh, if you're still thinking that I'm here to say that robotics are going to replace reporters, there's one thing I want to say that robotics and computers and computer science and scripting and data and all of this stuff can't do that we humans do, and that is be human. There is no algorithm for humanity, for the utter complexity of us as beings. And I personally don't believe there will ever be an algorithm that captures us as human beings, flawed, emotional people that we are. That's what we journalists should do and should focus on, is that humanity. Let the reporters do the easy work. Thank you.